This is Focus with Jack Caudill.
Good evening, I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome to this month's edition of Focus. This month we're talking about the homeless situation here in Rapid City and around the Black Hills. Three guests with us to talk about that today. Lysa Allison, she is the Executive Director of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. Francis Kaufman, formerly homeless, now on the board of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. Also with us today is Rapid City Mayor Steve Allender. Some numbers before we get going. The last point-in-time homeless count here in South Dakota happened on January 26th of this year. That was just a sheltered count due to the pandemic. That found a total of 817 sheltered homeless in the state, 617 adults and 200 children. In Rapid City, that was a total of 194 sheltered homeless, 150 adults and 44 children. Now, the last full count came back in 2020. That found a total of 1,058 homeless in the state, 843 adults and 253 children. Here in Rapid City, those totals came out to 353 homeless, 307 adults and 46 children. Lysa, we're going to start to you as you listen to those numbers. Do those seem realistic for what we're actually seeing on the streets and in the shelters here in town?
They do seem realistic for the shelter counts. We have been participating in the pit count for several years, and the numbers sound good.
Are those numbers going up? Are they going down? Is it enough that we can still handle those numbers?
Well, I think the numbers are definitely going up, and I think people can see that. As far as being realistic, as far as being able to handle the numbers, the shelter is full all of the time, especially this time of year. So other places, I know Yankton has a shelter and Sioux Falls has, but I don't know that any of them are expanding.
And as far as it getting worse, are you seeing that many more people? Is it more adults, more children? How is that demographic changing at all?
Well, the demographic that's always been the highest for the homeless population is single mothers with children. So we always have a waiting list at the Women and Children's Home, and in the meantime we can keep them housed at the Men's Mission and then transfer them up there. But homeless veterans we are actually seeing a decrease in, because we do have a state grant where we can get them housed almost immediately.
Francis Kaufman, we mentioned earlier, you are formerly homeless. What is the background? What is your background? What is the story of how you became homeless and got to where you are now?
Okay, well, I was a Navy veteran, and I struggled with drugs and alcohol pretty much my whole life so far, and I have almost 5 years clean now. Once I got in trouble with the law, it was a revolving door of just jail, get out, go back to jail, get out. No treatment options for me. And the last time was the big one, and my children were taken away, and me and my wife both got incarcerated. She got sent to the state penitentiary, and I got put in the drug court program. I was able to finish that, but during that time, so when I got out of jail, I didn't have anywhere to go. I had burned all the bridges in my life with my family, friends, and I walked over to the homeless shelter. That's where the jail told me to go. And luckily, being a veteran, I was able to stay on the veteran wing of the mission, and they are the ones that helped me get a job, a home. They helped me pay my bills and get everything back together so I could get my children back.
How tough of a fight was that to get from that point to the point where you are right now?
It was extremely, extremely difficult. And honestly, if it wasn't for my children, my son is the one that turned us in and got us, the opportunity to get clean. If it wasn't for him, I'm not sure if I would be dead, but I would definitely be incarcerated. So it was extremely difficult. It took a lot of years and a lot of work.
Mayor Allender, as you said, the last full homeless count in Rapid City 2020 found 353 homeless people in Rapid City. What effect does that have on the city as a whole?
Well, it has a tremendous effect because we're the type of organization that provides essential services to our general public, things like street department and water production and sewer and that sort of thing, public safety. But where there's not a place is for the government organization to house and feed and clothe people who have, lost control and are no longer self-sufficient. So when they're here, they're outdoors, they're drawing attention to themselves, at least inadvertently, by panhandling or abusing substances or that sort of thing. So there's a constant battle as far as where our priorities should lie, and of course the public is very opinionated on what should be and should not be done. But it's gotten to the point where historically we've had these informal systems of caring for the homeless, and that might be in the earlier days of my law enforcement career, of identifying who is without a shelter on a cold night and deciding if the mission could take them, or perhaps if they were drinking, detox could take them, and if not, if there were any options elsewhere. So those informal systems on their best day barely work. And then in the summer of 2020, we saw on the streets an influx of homeless people that overwhelmed all of those informal systems. So we became less effective but more consumed with the time expenditure in trying to mitigate that issue. So it became more costly and more laborious for the government in terms of public safety to try to meet the needs or adapt to this changing environment. But at the same time, it became less effective because the police and fire are drawn so much to other emergent duties that there's a bunch of reasons why it doesn't work out. But I've estimated, and it's very accurate. In fact, it's conservative, that the city of Rapid City is spending about $15 million doing the worst job of homeless mitigation of any of our partners, like the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. We're barely doing triage and transport and trying to keep the peace among this population, but we're doing it with half of our PD budget and half of the fire budget. So it's completely inefficient, and that's why we've been searching for a different solution.
So how do you draw that line between where there is a social solution and where this is a legal issue?
Well, that's a good question. I think, again, the public has a number of opinions on that, but I think providing public safety is one of government's highest callings. And so we do that through everything: testing drinking water and discharging sewer appropriately, and making roads that can be traveled, all of these type of things, especially then with fire and ambulance services and police officers. So those jobs are pretty well defined. What doesn't fit is the case of the person who has come here, has no means to support themselves, maybe suffering from a chronic addiction, and not willing or able to engage with any of those treatment options. And so then it becomes really a matter of making a decision. Is it the government's duty then to build a facility to allow the homeless to come in there and behave however they want, as long as they're getting fed and as long as they're sheltered? And I think now there's a philosophical divide there. And I believe our constituents at any given time would vote a resounding no vote on becoming the largest rescue mission in South Dakota or in the nation. You could not build such a facility big enough after the word got out that it was just a free-for-all. So I choose, and I've always chose to expend taxpayer dollars in a manner that provides opportunity for healing and rehabilitation as opposed to accommodation. And this comes from 37 years of living in Rapid City and being acquainted with the homeless every single one of those years. So it is controversial. In the last 2 years, it's gotten more controversial. And I think that's primarily because of the pandemic and everything being controversial now. But it's always been the same. Our position's always been the same.
Now, Lysa, talking about Mayor saying about the city, the government is an inefficient way to deal with this. How does your mission differ from that? What are the efficient ways to deal with this?
Well, we are a faith-based ministry, and you'll find that most missions across the country do have a faith-based component. And we're a private nonprofit, so we can choose who we want to serve, and we could limit it to anything that we want. But we choose to house anybody who wants to come in, who needs our services, that is respectful of our rules. We are a sober facility, so we don't allow people who are intoxicated in. We've had several people come in that are intoxicated, and of course that breeds violence and issues like that. So we also want to keep our guests and our staff safe, and that's our first priority. And we do the best that we can. Most of our money comes from donations from individual people. The city has been gracious enough to add us to our budget, and that never happened before Mayor Allender came. So he's invested in this, not only from being a police officer and a police chief, because he got to see it firsthand, but as the mayor, he understands the importance of what we do in the community.
All right, we got to take a break. We'll continue our look at the homeless situation here in Rapid City and the Black Hills when we continue with this month's edition of Focus. And I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus. This month we're talking about the homeless situation here in the Rapid City and the Black Hills. Lysa Allison is the executive director of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. You see people coming through the doors there with a wide variety of reasons why they're there. What are some of the most common reasons why people end up in that situation where they're homeless?
Most of it, honestly, is mental illness and drug and alcohol addiction. People are not able to pay their rent, so they get evicted. People have burned bridges with families, and they really have nowhere else to go. We have several other agencies that send people to us, so there's a variety of reasons. Sometimes it is bankruptcy issues, but that's certainly not one of the top reasons that we see people.
How many people are there? Are there a lot of people that just simply don't want to go to shelters, that would prefer to be out on the streets, or prefer to be intoxicated? They would rather be intoxicated than be inside with you guys.
There are certainly some, and there are several homeless camps around the city, and they don't, like, for example, at the Mission we have a curfew where you have to be in at 9:45, lights out at 10, and then you have to be in your bunk and until 6 o'clock in the morning. They don't want that. They want the freedom to just get out and leave at 2 o'clock in the morning and go smoke a cigarette or something and come back in. Where when we have that many people and limited staff, we have to have structure to keep everybody safe.
And Francis Kaufman, formerly homeless, now on the board of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. Francis, what kind of misconceptions do people have? You've lived this life for a while. What kind of misconceptions are there about that homeless world that people maybe don't understand?
I myself had many misconceptions, having never been homeless before. So, I just figured a lot of them were just, lazy people, which for the most part, most of the people that I met, it's overwhelmingly mental health issues and drug and alcohol addiction. And then it gets even worse. When you're homeless, you feel hopeless. So what better way to get rid of just cloud your mind, do drugs, drink. So,
Rapid City Mayor Steve Allender, formerly police chief, so you've dealt with this on both sides of the spectrum, both political and law enforcement. You were talking about using up a lot of city services with the homeless. Any idea what percentage of police time and police services are taken up dealing with homeless situations?
Good question. In the police department, it's typically been around 50% for some time. And this last summer, there was a point where it went to 65% of all of our calls for service were somehow related to homelessness. And that equates to about then 50 or 65% of the police department budget, which is very high. And the same is true for the fire department budget. The fire department runs the ambulance, so they're primarily a health organization, a healthcare organization that puts out fires. The majority of their calls are ambulance and safety calls. So that's why it's so expensive.
And as far as that goes, what do the police deal with them for? Is it crime? Is it welfare? What kind of things are the police dealing with homeless?
There's a bit of a range in what the type of calls for service are, from panhandling to drinking in public, passing out in public, perhaps public urination or indecent exposure, but also when there's a large group or even an individual laying in some public place, the police will go check on them. Many times that results then in a transport. It might result in an ambulance being summoned to that scene. And so there's a number of those things. What the police are not spending their time doing is arresting homeless people. Criminal justice reform started in the state in about 2013, and it's been reformed and re-reformed over and over ever since, to the point where you just cannot put someone in jail for the same things we used to, which is part of that informal system of getting them out of the cold sometimes. Misdemeanor crimes, these nuisance crimes, will not land someone in jail today. So almost no homeless people are being arrested.
All right. Lysa Allison, the Executive Director of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. Lysa, the 2020 homeless count found that 78% of the homeless in Rapid City are Native American. How does that cultural dynamic play into what you guys are doing there?
I don't know. I mean, obviously it plays into it because there's like the Indian Collective. They wanted to have their own, the Camp Minaloosahan, because they wanted a place for their relatives to be. So I think that we're going to see a trend moving forward where they're going to try and be very welcoming to their culture, which they always have been, but they have the means and the ability to do that. We've always run about 65% Native American, and then, but we treat everybody the same. We are a Christian organization, but we don't force our religion on anybody. We do have church services and Bible studies, and we pray before each meal, but nobody has to participate in that. So we just want people to be safe. We don't care anything about race or color or, sex or any of that kind of stuff. If people need a place to stay and they need to get warm and they need clothing and they need food, we open our doors. We just want people to be loved on and to be taken care of.
Now, people mainly think of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission as the building you guys have down there by the post office. Mm-hmm. What else is involved with what you have? You have other facilities as well?
Right. And so the building by the post office, we have a veterans program. We have the emergency shelter. We've got a public soup kitchen so anybody can come in and eat. We also have the Women and Children's Hospital, Women and Children's Home. In a separate location. We've got supportive services for veterans families office in a separate location. We've got our thrift store and admin offices in a separate location. And we also have an apartment building for homeless people who are previously homeless with a disability, whether that's a mental disability or a physical disability. So we're kind of spread all over.
Francis, again, you've been through all of this. What about the stigma that's attached to being homeless? How difficult is it to overcome that and reach out and say, I need some help?
Well, being able to reach out and ask for help I had myself to learn how to do that, just that. It's extremely difficult. And I mean, people look at homeless individuals walking around town and they kind of shy the other way. And they're just people trying to get along in life. And maybe they were dealt, a bad deck of cards. And that's, I met people from every walk of life, and we were all just there trying to be warm, eat, and the Cornerstone was there to fill that void. There wasn't anywhere else. I mean, once you get released from jail, if you don't have anywhere to go, that's what they tell you to go. And, so it's cool that the city government's, taking a part and helping them out.
All right. We got to take another break. We'll continue to look at the homeless situation when we come back with this month's edition of Focus. I'm Jack Caudill. Welcome back to this month's edition of Focus, talking about the homeless situation here in Rapid City and the Black Hills. Rapid City Mayor Steve Allender is with us. Mayor, does the city here deal with the homeless situation differently than other cities that you've seen around the country?
Yes, I'm sure we do. I think we take an active role in it as far as providing public safety and extending rights to homeless wherever we can find them. And we have some city financial investment into various facilities and organizations to help the homeless. But however, in the coastal states, cities have taken a different approach there where they allow camping in every bit of public property, and it's really more about accommodation of that. So I'm sure each city is a little bit unique how they deal with it.
Lysa Allison is the Executive Director of the Cornerstone Rescue Mission. People always talking about what are the solutions. Are there solutions? I mean, are there solutions? Is there an answer to this, really?
Well, one would want to hope so, but I think that there's things beyond the scope of what we can do. Certainly, there needs to be more affordable housing, and affordable housing isn't a house that's $120,000. It's basically an efficiency that people can rent for about $300 a month, including utilities. So that would help for people to be able to move on, and it would be affordable for their Social Security check that they get every month. Obviously, there's a need for more mental health facilities as far as a place to go. Cornerstone Rescue Mission has kind of turned into a mental health home or facility, which we're not really equipped to do. So that's something that's we really, really need. And I know that there's people working behind the scenes on that, and I'm very grateful for that. So is there a solution? I don't know that there's a solution. I think we're always going to have the homeless with us. We're always going to have the poor with us. But I think it's trying to come up with solid programs that really help people move forward and having people willing to engage in those programs.
How busy are you guys right now?
Oh, we're full. We have got about 25 people sleeping on the floor right now. We'll probably get a few more tonight because it's so chilly. We do have the mission open, as we call it, a warming station. Usually we don't have people there during the day other than at meal times. But starting at 6 o'clock this morning, we had people there just trying to stay warm, and we just make sure that they have hot chocolate, coffee, a place to stay where they can be safe. And if they want to spend the night, they're more than welcome.
Francis Kaufman, formerly homeless, now on the board of directors at the Cornerstone Rescue Mission, a success story out of there. What message you have for people that are in that situation and maybe feeling hopeless? Did you have that hopeless feeling?
I did. It was it was terrifying and humbling, and it was like that empty feeling inside when I walked out and I didn't know where I was going to go. And there was a gentleman standing outside the jail, and he was like, "Hey, I'm headed over to the mission. They're giving out coats, and you can get a hot meal there." And I said, "I'll follow you." I mean, for me, it's, well, like Lysa said, affordable housing. You know, the rent prices around here are skyrocketing. I think they are on a lot of the United States, but treatment, someplace for people to go to get help that, you know, won't cost you money. If you're trying to call around, you don't have insurance, where do you go for treatment? And long-term treatment, I'm not talking 30, 45 days. Some of these people with opiate and meth addiction, it's a 6, 7, 8 month process to get even a semblance of normalcy in your brain. So something like that would be good. It would be good, long-term help for people. I know that mental health is in the works around here, it is, but
Mayor Allender, as you look at it, is there a solution to all of this?
Well, a solution, no, but a better approach to it, a more robust approach to it, I think so. One of the things that's so frustrating to watch is the private nonprofits here in our area that do so much for the homeless and for those suffering from poverty are so underfunded. And meanwhile, you know, there's everyone pointing fingers at government to take tax money, take it from 100% of the taxpayers to do something with that money. But the private nonprofits really are the ones that need the funding. And if every adult in Rapid City gave 50 cents a day to some existing service like the Cornerstone Rescue Mission or many others, that's $10 million a year that they're not receiving today, that they desperately need to upsize their facilities, to add on treatment, and so on.
We are out of time. Good message, so everybody stand up and help. That's, I think, our final message. All right, Lysa Allison, Francis Kaufman, Steve Allender, thank you for joining us. And again, thank you for joining us for this month's edition of Focus. Hope to see you again the first Sunday night of next month. Good night.